these are some of the given reactions, and we need to find the names of A, Y, Z, M, P and R. Now we see that there is electrolysis happening, and we are given that X is caustic soda, which is another name for sodium hydroxide. The sodium chloride, also known as brine, when electrolyzed in water, it produces caustic soda, that is NaOH, and hydrogen gas as well as chlorine gas. Thus, A is sodium chloride, Y is chlorine gas, and Z is hydrogen gas. Now, sodium chloride upon electrolysis would give sodium and chlorine. So, M is sodium metal. Moving on to the third reaction, we know that Z is hydrogen gas, M is sodium. Now, sodium reacts with acetic acid to give sodium acetate. Hence, P is sodium acetate. Now, acetic acid plus Q in the presence of concentrated sulfuric acid gives R. This looks like esterification reaction, where acetic acid reacts with ethyl alcohol in the presence of concentrated sulfuric acid to produce ethyl acetate and water. Thus, Q is ethyl alcohol and R is ethyl acetate. Last one is this. We already know R, X and P. Substituting those, we get ethyl acetate plus caustic soda gives sodium acetate plus Q. So, Q is ethanol. Moving on to part B of the question. Improvise an activity to test Z, that is hydrogen gas. The hydrogen gas reacts with oxygen in the air, causing a combustion reaction that produces water and a squeaky pop. So, to test for hydrogen gas, you can bring a lit splint near the mouth of a test tube containing the gas. If you hear squeaky pop, then hydrogen is present. However, hydrogen gas is flammable, so be careful when handling it. Next is, name the process in which compounds X, Y and Z are formed from A. Justify your response. Well, this process is called the chlor-alkali process. It is an industrial method that uses electricity to break down brine, that is sodium chloride solution, to produce chlorine gas and sodium hydroxide, that is caustic soda. The electrolysis of brine was discovered in 1892 as a way to produce chlorine and sodium hydroxide. It became the primary method for producing these chemicals during 1960s. Mohan and Rohit observed that shoots of a plant growing in shade bend towards the sunlight, whereas leaves of touch-me-not plant fold and droop soon after touching. They were curious to know how these movements occur in plants. Now tell me, what causes the bending of shoots in the plants as shown here in figure A? Plants turn towards sunlight because of a process called phototropism. They actively grow towards a light source due to an uneven distribution of a plant hormone called auxin. So essentially, the side of the plant stem not facing the light produces more auxin, causing those cells to elongate and bend towards the light, maximizing its ability to capture sunlight for photosynthesis. And as we all know, plants need sunlight to produce food through photosynthesis. So, turning towards the light source optimizes their ability to capture solar energy. Be good? Thought so. Let's move to the next part of the question. What causes the folding of the leaves in touch-me-not plant as shown here? Let's first see how does it happen. When the plant is touched, specialized cells at the base of the leaflets called pulvinus lose water quickly. This causes a decrease in turgor pressure. The leaflets fold together and droop. Also note that these plants use electrical chemical means to convey the information from cell to cell. Movement happens at a point different from the point of touch. Have you ever tried touching a touch-me-not plant? Let me know in the comments below. Now, let's see why does it happen. This movement protects the plant from potential threats and reduces water loss. Also, the plant's ability to shrink deters herbivores, as animals may be afraid of a fast-moving plant. Now compare the movement of growth of the pollen tube towards ovule with the movements shown in part A of the given figure. First key difference is the stimulus. The movement of a pollen tube towards an ovule is an example of chemotropism, where the growth is directed by chemical signals released by the ovule, while phototropism is the directional growth of a plant in response to light. Now compare the movement shown in figure B with the movement of body parts in the animals. This is interesting. See, the leaves fold in response to touch, which is an involuntary nastic movement. Whereas the movement of animal body parts like muscles contracting is usually voluntary or involuntary and is controlled by the nervous system. Now let's see the difference in mechanisms of both. The leaves of touch me not fold due to changes in the turgor pressure, as we just discussed, in the cells at the base of the leaflets. Whereas the movement of animal body parts is controlled by the nervous system, which sends signals from the brain to the muscles. Another way to compare would be in the control mechanism for both. In touch me not, the plant reacts automatically to stimuli without any conscious thought. The movement of animal body parts is under conscious control and is facilitated by proteins in muscle cells. Other differences are nastic movements are quick and often reversible, but are typically slower than animal movements. Animal movements are usually more complex and involve coordinated actions across multiple body parts. This is a reflecting telescope. Reflecting telescopes revolutionized our ways of looking into the sky. They employ mirrors to gather and focus light rather than relying solely on the lenses as in their refracting counterparts. These telescopes utilize precisely shaped and polished mirrors to capture incoming light and reflect it to a focal point where it forms an image for the observation. Let's understand this process step by step before starting with the question answers. A reflecting telescope works by using a curved mirror to collect and focus light from distant objects, reflecting it onto a secondary mirror which then directs the focused light towards an eyepiece where the image can be viewed. Essentially, it uses mirrors to bounce light back to a focal point, creating a magnified image. Now, if we were to answer these questions, what kind of image of the star is seen by the observer at the eyepiece? We can say the image of a star seen through the eyepiece of a telescope is real, inverted, and magnified. Next is, what kind of mirror is used in the reflecting telescope? Well, they use concave mirrors, and that is because they focus incoming rays of light to a point. Next is, explain with reason what kind of optical device is used at the eyepiece. Well, the eyepiece of a reflecting telescope typically uses a convex lens to magnify the image formed by the primary mirror. All this is pretty interesting, right? Now the last part is, what is the role of the plane mirror in the telescope? You wanna guess? Well, a plane mirror redirects the light focused by the primary mirror towards the eyepiece, allowing for more convenient viewing and observation of celestial objects.